Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So, Bloomburrow Spoiler season is just around the corner. I believe Tuesday the 9th, I think is what it is, of July. Regardless, we have gotten early spoiler. Why? I don't know. Wizards just does random things sometimes, so here we go. And it is an exciting one with an exciting and adorable name. Oh, it's Hugs. I don't want a hug from this Hugs. Hugs Grisly Guardian. A 5/5 Badger Warrior with trample that cost X, red, red, green, green. A very intense, huggy mana cost right there. Very specific. I mean, with the red, red, green, green. And the X is just like, yeah. I mean, dump a bunch of mana to it. See what we get. What happens? Here we go. When it enters the battlefield, exile the top X cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. You may play additional land on each of your turns. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. First up, I mean, just as normal, you know, with green, technically this is like a 4-mana creature, right? But it's a 5/5 with trample, so there you go. You know, power creep from way back in the day, you're like, wow, a 6/6 for 6 mana. And these days, like, yeah, if it costs 4, it better have 5 power if it's in green. Regardless, that's just like a tiny portion of this, obviously, because the X value, yeah, you're in green. You're in the best ramp color. Lands are a protected resource in Commander for the most part, and yeah, you can ramp to your heart's content with lands and not really get punished for it, and then all of a sudden dump a ton of mana into this, and then get a lot of additional card advantage, or should I say temporary card advantage. It is Impulse Draw. Though, again, keep in mind this does say you may play those cards, not cast. And that is a big distinction because Impulse Draw can sometimes go either way. And when you can play those cards, that means that, well, it's kind of like having a secondary hand out in exile, and you can actually play lands because you can't cast lands except for like Erixmathes, which is not really a land to start anyways. But you can play lands from that, which of course plays into that second part of playing additional land on each of your turns because, yeah, I mean, whether it's from your hand or from exile, and obviously if you dump a ton of mana into this and, you know, Impulse Draw a ton of cards, chances are you're going to hit at least one land. So, it is temporary advantage that you're getting from this, though, a giant X spell from the command zone that you can dump a ton of mana into to get a lot of card advantage from this. That's amazing. Also, kind of like ramp too. It's not guaranteed ramp, but it kind of also is, at least for that next turn, if you put a decent amount into that X, that you're going to hit at least another land. That being said, with this kind of a commander, that you know you're going to be able to play extra lands each turn, you know, kind of like, I guess, Azusa, whatever, but Mina and Den, I think, is like the most comparable one to this when it comes to like the actual mana value, it being in Gruul as well, and yeah, giving you an extra land each turn, essentially. You're gonna run more lands than just like, I mean, my standard is usually, it goes up and down depending on the deck, is like 36, 37 or so. You're gonna be running more than that with this kind of a commander because you want to make sure you're hitting your lands. That being said, of course, there's ways to use and abuse while getting extra lands into play. There's ways to use and abuse the Impulse Draw, you know, casting things from outside your hand, etc., 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 and ways to get this effect again and again and again and again. And also, sure, if you just want to, like, make it more powerful and hit players because it's got trample, it's a 5/5/4 mana, you can do that as well. There's a good amount of directions that you can go with this one. The way that I would go, though, is most likely, you know, like, big mana, get lands in play, do some big mana fun things. You could also go with Landfall, I guess I should say, as well, too. But yeah, I'd probably really play pretty heavily into casting this a couple of times, getting a lot of Impulse Draw, and also, yeah, taking advantage of getting a ton of lands in play, cast other big things as well. So on this episode, I'm going to be taking you through budget buys and price your picks, cards within my budget, cards outside of my budget that you might want to consider for this brand new, exciting commander. And I should have said that, hey, every single one of these cards is going to be a card list, link in the description below. Now, with that said, the budget buys cards that are less than $1, even within my budget. Decoction Module. 2 mana for this artifact that says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under control, you get an energy. I'm not really recommending that you go energy with this commander. What I am recommending is you consider this card because of that next part. Pay for, tap, return target creature you control to its owner's hand. So basically, 4 mana to bounce one of your creatures. That is a decent amount of mana. Now, here's the thing. You're not in, well, blue. Blue is the main color when it comes to, like, hey, bounce something back to your hand quite easily for, like, any reason you can do it. You've got a lot of different resources to do that in blue. There's only so many in red and green. I'll go through some here in a bit, too. Outside of this one, 4 mana is a good amount to have to pay, but again, like, mana's probably not going to be a concern for you because you're going to be like, oh, yeah, just dump a ton of mana, dump a ton of mana, dump a ton of mana. A lot of resources into getting a lot of mana to put a lot into that X. If you can save some extra, sure, do that, and then pay this. Bounce your commander back to your hand again. Can be at instant speed whenever you want, essentially, right before your turn, so you can set yourself up for another giant impulse draw for you. So keep that in mind, because yeah, I personally would like to use my commander as a card advantage, or temporary card advantage, I should say, engine with this deck. Next up, First Responder. A bit easier with this one. A 3/3 Ogre Citizen with Vigilance for 4 mana. At the beginning of your end step, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand, then put a number of counters equal to that creature's power on First Responder. This is just straight up value. Whereas Decoction Module, it's like, okay, you get energy, which you probably won't use for anything, although we might talk about something here in a little bit regardless. This one is like, okay, end step, you don't have to like attack with a creature to actually get this effect. You don't have to send this into danger to get this effect, and this actually gets benefits. This grows by doing that. Again, they say Vigilant 3/3. Not probably going to swing too heavily with it early on, but you bounce your commander back to your hand. That's 5 extra counters. It's an 8/8. Cool. And you just bounce your commander for free, essentially, once this is in play. So all of a sudden, yeah, I cast my commander again. Good. Extra impulse draw value. Now this is an 8/8 I can just swing with pretty safely, most likely, and keep back for defense too. Next turn, play my commander again. Cool. Impulse draw a ton. Awesome. And then all of a sudden, yeah, 5 extra counters on this at the end step as well. So yeah, 13/13. This can become quite massive throughout the game. Roaring Primadox is like an earlier example of this in Magic's history. M13, you can see how things have changed. A 4/4 Beast for 4 mana in green. Beginning of your upkeep, return a creature control back to its owner's hand. It's not a may. So keep in mind, like, unlike First Responder, it's not a may. You have to do that. Now, if you're like stuck, you could just return the Primadox back to your hand. That being said, this might seem like a downside. It can obviously be an upside, though, if you have, like, an ETB like your commanders. So keep in mind doing that, or, like, you know, like a Reclamation Sage ETB, or, like, an ETB that might draw you cards, etc., etc. So keep that in mind. But yes, this is the kind of strategy you might want to consider if you're really like, okay, I want to utilize my commander as a giant resource for dumping a ton of mana to impulse drawing a lot. You could also, I mean, sacrifice your commander if you really want to do that too. You've got some sacrifice outlets like Goblin Bombardment, etc. that you can utilize to sacrifice your commander. Keep in mind the commander tax is 2 extra, but again, mana's probably not going to be a problem. We'll get to some mana things here in a little bit. Memory Worm, we got quite a few cards actually nowadays that benefit you when you're casting things from not your hand, basically anywhere outside your hand. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Memory Worm is going to deal 2 damage to target player. That player discards a card, then draws a card. Put a counter on Memory Worm. So this one, I mean, I guess, like, if an opponent has, like, 1 card in your hand, their hand, and you, like, know it's a good card for some reason, then sure, you can be like, okay, haha, I'm getting rid of that card. It could be just a way to ping, which is nice, or you could actually, in a situation where you really need to dig down to your deck, ping yourself. Yeah, it's a 2 damage, but ow. Okay, you know what you can do is then loot, or not loot, I guess rummage with this one. So this is more of a, it's an edge case kind of card, but it might work in your deck. Other ones aren't really edge cases that are going to work well, like Party Thrasher. It's a crazy good card for this kind of a deck. Non-creature spells you cast from exile have Convoke. Yeah, so if you're going wide with this kind of a deck, and there are definitely X spells, like giant, huge X spell type cards that give you a lot of creatures, which, again, if you're going to be going big mana, do that, and all of a sudden you have a giant army, and then you're like, okay, cool, I can convoke a lot of spells out of the, you know, exiled pile of cards that I have from my commander. Begin a pre-combat main phase, you may discard a card if you do, exile top of cards in your library, then choose one of them, you apply the card this turn. Extra impulse draw type effects can be great, of course, with this too. Sisterhood of Card, enters the battlefield, they counter on it. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere in your hand, you double the number of counters on it. The amount of power this can have is just absolutely absurd. Exponential growth, essentially, just going, okay, 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32 to 64 to 128 to 256 to 512. I'm going to stop right there. I think that's all correct, though. But yeah, it can get really big really, really quickly. And again, when you are kind of working around like this impulse draw, especially again with your commander giving you access to a lot of things, you can make something like this, which just costs 2 mana, into a massive, absurd threat. And of course, there's like power matter synergies you can use in green as well. Unstable Amulet. There's battlefield 200 counters. I did tell you that there was going to be like one other little energy thing here in a little bit, but like, yeah, I wouldn't really play too heavily into like Decoction Module in this. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere in your hand, deals 1 to each opponent. That's already just a nice effect. It's kind of like Gutter Snipe-esque, but again, for the impulse draw, it's only 1, not 2, but that's still pretty good. You can also tap and pay that 2 energy to exile top card of your library, play it until you exile another card with Unstable Amulet. So at the very least, you're getting 1 impulse draw out of this as well. Valdorn, Dreadwolf Herald. Whenever you cast a spell from exile or a land enters the battlefield under your control from exile, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. It's going to happen quite a bit. Again, we talked about like Convoke type effect that we had earlier. Yeah, this can just grow that a lot by giving you a lot of wolves. Again, casting all those wolves, playing lands as well. And again, you get to play additional lands. So yeah, even if you're just like land drop out of your, exile pile, essentially, your impulse draw pile, that's still like 4 power across 2 bodies. Pay 1 tap, discard a card, exit top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So impulse draw, again, specific to just this turn, but still. Next up, Impending Flux, potentially a one-sided board wipe. Paradox, X damage to each opponent, each creature they control. X is 1 plus the number of spells you cast from anywhere other than hand this turn. You can foretell it as well, so you can just kind of like prepay it, which is nice. So do that. Play a lot of cards from exile and outside your hand and whatever, and then do so, and then all of a sudden your opponents are in big trouble. A lot of damage to creatures, a lot of damage to them. Arax, Empress of Mars, yet another way to make a lot of creature tokens. Battlecry, which is nice. Again, +1/+0 until end turn when it's attacking. 5/4 Trampler for 4 mana in red. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you get a 2/2 red alien warrior creature token. Quite nice. Again, being able to fill the board in absolutely no time with a commander like this. Savvy Trader. Enters the battlefield, exile target permanent card from your graveyard. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 to cast. This is absolutely incredible. It's basically like, hey, okay, the impulse draw cards now have extra juice to them, essentially extra value in that you are getting a discount for each and every single one of those cards that you're playing. So playing cards out of there is going to be more effective and efficient than playing cards out of your hand even, which is pretty crazy. And then finally, in this category, there's a Tilinicali, I can't get that right. Tilincali, there we go, maybe. Hunter, 7/7 Trampler. Once each turn, you may pay 0 to pay the mana cost for a creature spell you cast from exile. Quite nice. It also gives you the option to exile target creature card from your graveyard until the end of your next turn. You may cast that card as well for the adventure side. But yeah, paying 0 rather than paying the cost for a creature spell out of your exile is quite nice once per turn. Tireless Provisioner. Take advantage of the lands you are playing. Again, you get to play extra lands. You're already going to be ramping a ton thanks to this commander. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food or treasure token. Yeah, 99.9999999% of the time you're going to be picking treasure, most likely. But yes, being able to just ramp a ton. Again, literally every single turn, let's say you play 2 lands, which is pretty easy with a commander like this once you're set up. Land. Cool. 2 treasures, 2 extra mana to do whatever with. Absolutely incredible. See, a landfall can obviously be a way that you're taking advantage of this. And also, I've mentioned like other ways to make tokens. Rampaging, Baloth, Zendikar's Royal, those kinds of cards. Lots of ways to go wide with landfall as well. This renewal, obviously, you are in green. I did say, yes, you have access to the best land ramp. Pretty much like the only land ramp outside of like Wayfarer's Bauble, Burnished Heart, etc. But yeah, basically, ramp a ton. Get a ton of lands into play. Dump that mana into your commander. Then get other giant X spells from your commander or whatever and cast those two with the giant mana. With all this mana too, you can also utilize something like Horizon Stone, which is incredible with this kind of a deck. 5 mana artifact. If you lose unspent mana, that mana becomes colorless instead. So basically, you can just kind of like dump all that mana into nothingness. You just leave it in your pool, and then it says, oh, instead of mana burning, which years ago that would have been, now it's like, okay, cool. Store that up. It's a great mana bank for you. Keep that up, and all of a sudden, whenever you need to, dump that into a giant X spell like, your commander. And then have a giant turn where you're like, okay, X equals 20. Awesome. Yay, cool. Yeah, I guess mana doublers too could help you out as well. But yes, still, being able to just dump a ton of mana in your commander, this can really help you out, help you have a big turn, big explosive, game-ending turn even. Next up for the pricier picks, again, cards outside of my budget, but might be within yours, above $1. Unfortunately, Erratic Portal, reprint it, Wizards. It's it's a weird old card, but still, it's a good card. Artifact for 4, pay 1 tap, return target creature to its owner's hand, lets the controller pays 1. I wonder if they're ever gonna change return to just bounce. Bounce creature. That's the exact same amount of words anyways. Never mind. Bounce it. So yeah, basically you can bounce an opponent's creature if they're not paying attention and they're like, I've tapped out. I will swing with my giant game-ending creature. You bounced it for 1 mana. I can't pay that. No, my plans. But yeah, so there's that option, or you're like, oh, okay, I'd like to reuse my commander now. I bounced my commander. I choose not to pay the 1. It has been bounced. Good for me. So yeah, other ways to essentially get your commander back in your hand can be very helpful with this. Also, again, like I mentioned earlier, there's sort of sacrifice outlets too, like Greater Good you can utilize as well. There's other ways, but yeah, the bouncing way is the more efficient way when it comes to not worrying about extra commander attacks every single time. Next up, when it comes to the outside the hand things, yeah, the Prosper cards get pretty expensive, Passion Archaeologist. Yeah. Commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal that spell's mana value to target opponent. It's a $17 card. Youch. Yeah, that kind of like I still say prosper, but there's like a lot of like impulse draw-y type benefit commanders now these days. This is yet another one that kind of like can help you lean into that by giving the impulse draw. Being able to just ping your opponent's faces just by casting spells can be really, really, really good. Next up, speaking of really, really, really good, Wild Magic Source for a 4/3 Orc Shaman. The first spell you cast from exile each turn has Cascade. Extra free value once per turn when you're casting from exile. Yeah, that's quite nice. Just getting free Cascade can be quite nice. And again, like, it's at each turn, so like if you have instants that you're casting from exile from that impulse draw, keep that in mind as well, that you're getting that value then too. Keeper of Secrets, somewhat similar to our Pain the Inflicting card earlier. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, it's going to deal damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. So again, this plus, well, Passionate Archaeologist is quite the recipe for disaster for your opponents. It's also a 6/4 first strike and haste for some reason for 6 mana as well. But yeah, a lot of damage to be done with this. Nullfish Knee. I can never remember this thing's name every single time. I'm like, that one ugly thing. Yeah. How do I spell that? Don't know. Going at EDH Rec, looking at Prosper, and saying like, what's this card? Okay, find it. 4/6 Beast Demon, flying for 6 mana. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, copy, choose targets for the copy. It's a permanent spell. The copy gains haste in the beginning of the end step. Sacrifice it. Yeah, this is super good. Basically, double up every single spell you cast from exile. If it's a creature, it's just like a temporary, or it's a permanent, it's a temporary copy of it, which is fine for the most part, but yeah, still extra value, at least temporarily. But yeah, but just like an instant sorcery, you're doubling that up permanently, which is absolutely gross and lovely. And then Flaming Tyrannosaurus, a 5/5 dinosaur with menace for 7 mana. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, 3 damage to any target, then put a counter on this. When it dies, deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Essentially, lightning bolt off of every single spell you cast from exile, and then also grow this, and also when this dies, hit each opponent for a ton of damage. Absolutely disgusting. Speaking of disgusting, of course, Scoot Swarm. Again, I talked about landfall. I also talked about like invoke. I also talked about just flooding them with creatures. Scoot Swarm does that and then some. I mean, this is true exponential growth. A 1/1 insect for 3 mana and green. Land enters battlefield to control, you get a 1/1 insect. Nice. But more importantly, if you control 6 or more lands, which is incredibly easy to do, obviously you're in green and playing commander. Create a token's copy of it instead. So essentially you get another copy of it, and then another copy of that, and another copy of that. All of a sudden, you are flooding the board with an absurd amount of Scoot Swarms that no one can keep track of, and the game is probably over. So yeah, that's a crazy good win condition for you. Crucible of Worlds, if I could talk. You may play land cards from your graveyard. That is a huge, huge effect, especially if you have any kind of fetch lands, which of course does include cards like even like Evolving Wilds, Timberwood Expanse, Escape Tunnel these days. So yeah, being able to utilize those types of cards again and again and again and again and again can be absolutely amazing, especially for a commander that again gives you an additional land drop each turn. So like if you have, say, an Evolving Wilds and a Terramorphic Expanse, congratulations, you are able to just get those both out, tap, sacrifice both of them, get 2 more basics. Cool, just like basically remove every single basic out of your deck eventually, which you're probably going to win the game if you have everything out. Yeah, especially with the amount of lands that you might play with this kind of a commander. And also keep in mind all the landfall triggers you can get. Yeah, that can be quite good. Also, other effects that give you additional land drops as well, like Azusa Lost But Seeking, play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. A lot of these can be decently expensive, but there's other kind of cards like the tap ones that are like put one in from your hand, essentially. But keep in mind those are from hand. The additional lands work better with this kind of a commander because you're going to be playing a lot of things from exile. Playing a lot of things from those impulse draws. So just be able to like, oh, okay, cool. I've got my regular land drop, my commander's land drop, and then these 2, that's 4 land drops that you would have. And yeah, if you put a lot of mana that X, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I've got 4 lands out of there. Dump more in, bounce my commander back to my hand, replay my commander for a ton of mana, get more. Okay, dump more lands. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do with this kind of a commander. Some absolutely gross things when you get things really set up. But as this episode is coming to a close, I'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts on hugs. Oh, hugs. Oh. I mean, there's definitely going to be some like group hug decks around this as well, just because it's called hugs too. But yeah, I'm thinking like big mana, X spells, just massive ramp, fun times, impulse draw, additional lands. What's not to love about that from a 5/5 badger named Hugs? Yeah, it's kind of adorably scary. Anyways, let me know what your thoughts are on this one in the comments below. If you are interested in this commander, make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.